The Middle Ages, contrary to romantic notions, was a time when human life meant little and survival often turned out to be harsh and painful. In this story, you will find yourself in the place of an unnamed girl whose fate has been cruelly predetermined since childhood. Her path will take you from a child sold by her own father to a brothel, to a woman who has suffered diseases, epidemics of plague, cruelty of clients, and indifference of society. Told in the second person, this story immerses you in a dark, realistic, everyday life where dirt, suffering, and humiliation become commonplace, and the very idea of freedom turns into a bitter illusion. But before you get comfortable, please give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is right now. It's always exciting to see who has joined us. Now, settle in comfortably as we begin. You were 12 years old when your father lost you in a game of dice. He was a cobbler, his hands permanently stained from tanning leather, and his breath a mixture of ale, onions, and despair. You remembered how he shrugged as he handed you off, not even bothering to glance back. Your mother had died 2 winters before, coughing blood into your apron, her eyes dull from fever. Your stepmother watched you leave with a satisfied smile, relieved at having one less mouth to feed. You arrived at dusk, led into a town whose very air was heavy with decay and resignation. The stench of manure, rotting fish, and human waste filled your lungs, choking you with each breath. The streets were narrow and filthy, and shadows danced menacingly against the grimy stone walls. Your handler dragged you forward, not gently but efficiently, as if transporting livestock rather than a child. The house was nestled between a butcher's shop and a tavern. A faded wooden sign hanging above the door proclaimed it to be the House of Mercy, but no one believed that lie, least of all you. Mercy had no scent, but this place reeked of mold, sweat, and something else, something metallic and sour you could not yet name. Matron greeted you at the door. She was a heavy-set woman with cold, hollow eyes. She never yelled. Yelling would have been a kindness, offering at least some clue to her moods. Instead, she merely stared at you, silently appraising your worth. You shivered under her gaze. "You're lucky to be here, girl," she finally spoke, her voice a dry rasp. "Most your age get sent straight to the mines or worse." You did not reply. What could you say? "Thank you" would have tasted like ash. Matron named you Droplet. You wondered if she found the name amusing, given your small stature and trembling limbs. Soon you would learn that irony was her only source of pleasure. The first night came too quickly. They scrubbed you down with stale water and a rough cloth. Your skin turned raw and pink, stinging from scratches. The older girl who bathed you whispered instructions urgently, her voice breaking as she spoke. She did not look you in the eyes. Nobody here looked each other in the eyes. It made it easier, you supposed. Your room was barely more than a closet, with a dirty mattress stuffed with straw. There were bugs in the corners, their tiny legs scratching quietly. You shared this miserable space with Ilan, a pale and coughing girl only slightly older than you. She stared at the ceiling, occasionally whispering nonsense words to herself, words from a prayer she no longer believed. When the client arrived, the noise downstairs stilled abruptly. Heavy footsteps climbed the stairs and paused outside your door. You stopped breathing, convinced your heart would burst. Ellen clutched your hand briefly, her fingers clammy and weak, before quickly releasing it. The man who entered was large, his face obscured by a hood. He smelled sharply of old meat, sweat, and cheap wine. You flinched, and he laughed, a low, rattling chuckle that crawled under your skin. You wanted to scream, to run, but your limbs refused to obey. All you could do was stare at the chipped plaster on the wall, tracing imaginary patterns in its cracks as he moved closer. The pain was blinding, sharp, and invasive. You bit your lip until it bled, focusing on that small, controllable agony rather than the larger, consuming horror. Tears did not come, not yet. You would learn soon enough that tears were meaningless here. When he was finished, he tossed coins onto the mattress beside your shaking body and left without another word. You did not move, afraid that any motion might shatter you completely. The smell lingered, blood, sweat, and shame clinging to your skin, soaking into the straw mattress. After a long silence, Ellen finally spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper, strained from coughing. You will survive this. We all do, at least for a while. That night you lay awake, staring blankly at the ceiling, memorizing its cracks. When morning arrived, it did not bring relief, only another layer of grime to your existence. Matron came to collect the coins, nodding curtly, satisfied with your first performance. Good girl, she murmured without warmth. Praise felt worse than punishment, as if she were marking you forever. The days turned into weeks, each one identical. You cleaned yourself with the same bucket of stale water, ate the same watery gruel, and serviced the same grim faced clients who left bruises and sour memories behind. You grew numb. The passage of time became meaningless, marked only by the gradual worsening of Ellen's cough. One morning you woke to silence. Ellen lay beside you, cold and stiff, her eyes fixed upon eternity. Matron clicked her tongue irritably and ordered the body thrown onto a cart with dead dogs and rats. There was no mourning, no ceremony, just another inconvenience removed. You were moved to a smaller room with a girl named Alice, who hummed constantly and stared at nothing. The stench was worse here, trapped between the damp walls and unwashed linens. You adapted quickly, learning to breathe through your mouth, to avoid looking too closely at your clients' faces. Occasionally, you overheard conversations among the older girls. They spoke dreamily of knights and nobles, men who would whisk them away to better lives. But you knew better already. Your clients were tanners and blacksmiths, old men with toothless grins, and farmers whose hands stank of manure. The knights stayed in their castles, untouched by your filthy reality. One night, a drunken farmer struck you so hard you fell unconscious. You woke to Matron dabbing cold water onto your forehead, scowling. Don't damage yourself. she hissed. You're no good to me, broken. You nodded weakly, understanding that your value lay not in who you were, but in what you could endure. In time, you discovered there was no God here, only cold stones, stinking bodies, and endless silence punctuated by moans, coughs, and curses. Yet, despite everything, you continued to exist, stubbornly clinging to life, as though surviving were your only act of defiance. And so, the months stretched into years, grinding you into a shape that suited your surroundings, less human, more object. Eventually, you stopped remembering your real name. Only Droplet remained, a cruel joke whispered by fate, staining your soul like the odors of this accursed place. When your first year ended, you had forgotten how to cry. Your dreams, too, vanished quietly, replaced by an unfeeling acceptance of the reality that you were nothing, just another shadow among shadows, lost in the perpetual darkness of your life. And yet somehow you still woke every morning, rising from the stained mattress, washing away yesterday's horrors, and waiting to see how the world would hurt you again. You thought you had reached the bottom, but your journey downward had barely begun. You are 16 now, though your age hardly matters in the dim glow of flickering candles and sweat stained sheets. 4 years have passed since you were dragged to the house of mercy, 4 endless cycles of pain, shame, and resignation. Your body feels older, heavier, worn thin by relentless use, and yet you persist, no longer from hope, but because you've forgotten any other way of existing. Now you serve in a different establishment. This one boasts slightly cleaner walls and a lingering scent of rosemary, masking but not eliminating the ever present odors of mildew, spoiled ale, and human despair. You might even call this place luxurious if your standards hadn't long ago sunk into the mud beneath your feet. Clients here aren't just farmers and tanners. They hold minor positions of authority: guildmasters, scribes, apothecaries, city watchmen. They come wearing garments lined with fur and velvet, feigning sophistication with perfumed oils and scented wigs. Yet beneath their finery, they still reek of stale sweat, sour wine, and secret shame. Tonight, your first visitor is a balding scribe named Herman. He arrives dressed in burgundy silk, threadbare along the seams. His breath is heavy with onions, garlic, and the cloying sweetness of wine gone sour. Herman imagines himself a poet, reciting verses from memory as he fumbles clumsily at your clothes. Each poem he slurs into your ear feels like an insult, words of love spat with contempt. You close your eyes, pretending to listen as Herman struggles with his own belt, muttering curses under his breath. He finally gives up, panting heavily and slapping you hard across the cheek. The sting reminds you of your father's fists, though the scribe's hand is softer, weaker. You smile bitterly. Luxury indeed. Next comes a merchant known only as Master Elrich. He wears a powdered wig that harbors lice, little creatures scurrying visibly through the white curls. You've learned never to flinch or react, though the insects occasionally drop onto your shoulders, crawling across your skin. Elrich enjoys humiliating the girls. He makes you kneel, then scolds you for your imperfections, even as he himself reeks of vinegar and spoiled meat. He enjoys his power, delighting in your enforced obedience. You wonder how much misery it takes to feel superior to a creature as broken as yourself. Days and nights blur into each other, marked only by variations of pain and degradation. Your companions change frequently. Sometimes a girl is lucky enough to become a concubine for a minor noble or a wealthy merchant, though luck is relative. Once, your closest friend, Marta, was taken by a cleric who promised salvation. You envied her briefly until rumors reached you of her imprisonment in a cellar beneath the church. There, she waits in darkness, a fate perhaps worse than your own. You wonder if she prays now, if she ever believed in salvation, or if she simply hoped that silence and submission might buy mercy from an indifferent God. One evening, a city guardsman named Tobias enters your room. His leather armor is stained, worn from use, and his knuckles cracked from countless brawls. Yet he speaks gently at first, offering stale bread and a small wedge of cheese. You chew hungrily, suspicious but grateful. Only afterward, when he strikes you across the mouth, do you understand his generosity was a cruelty disguised. Blood fills your mouth, coppery and warm. He laughs as you spit a broken tooth onto the dirt floor. You wonder if kindness has ever been anything but a prelude to violence. Illness creeps among you like a quiet assassin. You learn the grim art of using herbs to terminate unwanted pregnancies, chewing parsley until bitterness fills your mouth, drinking vinegar until your stomach churns. It works sometimes. Other times, girls simply disappear, or worse, survive weakened, damaged, unable to return to work. Matron dismisses them without sympathy. To be broken here means becoming invisible, discarded onto the street with nothing but regret. One night you sit beside a dying girl named Liza, holding her clammy hand as fever ravages her body. You do not weep. Tears seem meaningless, wasted on a life already lost. Her whispers fade into incoherence, her breath rattling painfully until she finally falls silent forever. You watch impassively as her body is carried away, wondering if death truly offers rest or merely another cruel joke. Sometimes, during rare quiet hours, you imagine a different life, one where you have a name beyond droplet. But the fantasy fades quickly, crushed beneath the weight of reality. Here, names do not matter. You exist only to be used and discarded, a human vessel to empty and refill nightly. You have forgotten your real name completely now. Even your memories seem unreal, belonging to someone else. Rumors of the plague seep into the city like a foul mist. Populated streets grow quieter. Clients become fewer, but more desperate, their demands harsher. Fear breeds violence, and violence breeds more pain. You sense death's nearness, waiting silently at the edge of your existence, patient and inevitable. You do not fear it. Instead, you envy its calm indifference. Each night you wash with stale water, scrubbing the evidence of another day's shame from your skin. But no amount of washing can cleanse the memories, the smells, the invisible stains that cling to your soul. You accept your lot without complaint, not because you are brave, but because you've forgotten any other choice exists. One day, a nobleman arrives. He smells oddly pleasant, scented heavily with lavender and rose water. His cloak is immaculate, embroidered with gold thread, but his eyes betray cruelty, cold and calculating. He studies you carefully, as if choosing cattle for slaughter. You hold your breath, dreading his selection, but he chooses another girl, Anika, young and trembling beside you. She cries as he leads her away. Later, she returns bruised and silent, eyes hollow. Luxury, you realize bitterly, is just another form of suffering wrapped in velvet. Slowly, you lose count of how many times you have endured this cycle. You are trapped in a rhythm of pain, resignation, and survival. You learn that dignity is merely an illusion, something your clients invent to justify their desires. You have no illusions left, only numb acceptance. Your only relief comes in brief sleep, dreamless, heavy, filled with the oblivion you crave. Yet you continue to awaken each morning, emerging from exhaustion, because existence, even a miserable one, remains stubbornly persistent. You envy those who escape into madness or death, yet you cling to life anyway, unsure why. Perhaps survival is your only act of rebellion, a bitter refusal to grant the world your surrender. So, night after night, you lie awake, staring into darkness, knowing tomorrow will bring the same familiar cruelty, the same degradation, the same unending cycle. You realize that wealth changes nothing. Rich or poor, clients are the same: cruel, indifferent, hungry, afraid. Money merely masks the stench, but beneath silks and perfumes, human misery remains unchanged, and you, droplet, remain caught in the machinery of suffering, forever trapped between despair and numb acceptance, wondering if escape is even possible, or if this is simply all there ever was and ever will be. You are 16, but your soul is ancient, cracked, and empty. You have learned exactly how a rich client smells, and it is no different from poverty, just pain masked by sweeter illusions. The plague arrives like an unwanted guest, silent, persistent, and indiscriminate. At first, people ignore its whispered presence, dismissing rumors as exaggerations meant to frighten children. But soon, bodies begin piling up in alleys, and fear settles heavily upon the city. You are barely 18, but your body feels twice that age, worn thin by years of misery. The arrival of death does not frighten you, it merely seems another inevitability. The first signs appear among your clients. They cough harshly, faces flushed and clammy with fever, then they vanish altogether. Soon the brothel becomes emptier, quieter, a tomb filled with whispers and unanswered prayers. The girls grow restless, sensing something darker than their daily torment creeping nearer. One morning, matron orders you to help dispose of the dead. You drag bodies through narrow hallways, their stiffened limbs knocking softly against the walls. You feel nothing as you toss them into the street cart, just numb resignation. Each corpse carries the same stench: sour sweat, dried vomit, and decay. Your hands soon become accustomed to the texture of cold skin, the rigidity of death. Days later, the first girl among you falls ill. Her name is Anna, barely 14, with eyes too large for her gaunt face. Fever ravages her quickly, leaving her gasping for air. You sit beside her as she fades, wiping blood-tinged saliva from her lips. She clutches your hand weakly, begging silently for help you cannot give. When she finally dies, Matron simply shakes her head, annoyed at the inconvenience. Bodies accumulate faster than they can be cleared. The market square becomes a place of death, piled high with corpses awaiting burial. The air is thick with the stench of rotting flesh, flies buzzing hungrily over swollen limbs. A market of the dead, trading life for nothing but silence and decay. You wonder idly how long before you join them. A new class of men appears in the city: plague doctors wearing grotesque masks with long beaks stuffed with herbs. They move slowly, silently, indifferent to the suffering around them. Occasionally, they pause to prod a corpse with a cane, nodding solemnly before moving on. They do not heal, they merely confirm death, as if it needed confirmation. One night, driven by desperate impulse, you attempt to escape. The city gates are sealed, guarded by frightened men clutching swords. They refuse passage to anyone who might carry infection. As you plead, they beat you mercilessly, leaving you bleeding in the mud. 6 of them, taking turns with fists and boots, making sure you understand your worthlessness. Eventually, broken but alive, you crawl back to your prison willingly. When Matron sees you, she sighs irritably, tossing you a rag and pointing toward the bucket of dirty water. "Clean yourself," she snaps. "You're no good filthy." The irony of her words almost makes you laugh. Filth is all you've ever known. And yet, even this humiliation is familiar, almost comforting in its predictability. Laughter does come later, though not in comfort. It erupts suddenly, uncontrollably, echoing through the silent corridors of the brothel. The other girls watch fearfully, convinced madness has finally claimed you. Perhaps they're right. Sanity has little meaning in a world gone mad with death. Still, laughter seems preferable to tears. Tears have never brought you comfort, only more punishment. Weeks pass and the plague's grip tightens. Food grows scarce, reduced to moldy bread and thin broth. Your bones ache constantly. Your stomach growls angrily. You lose track of how many girls have vanished into mass graves, faces blurred together into a single, indistinct memory of suffering. You're not sure why you remain untouched by death. Perhaps even the plague finds your life too bitter to end. One night, you help a young girl named Greta give birth prematurely. The infant is tiny, malformed, with a single staring eye. It never draws breath, yet Greta clings desperately, weeping bitterly. You wrap the tiny corpse in a rag, setting it gently aside, watching Greta sob quietly. You envy the child its swift passage through life, escaping pain before it even began. By now, death feels familiar, almost comforting in its consistency. But the living still terrify you. Their desperation, cruelty, and selfishness seem limitless. Even amid this pestilence, clients still occasionally come, desperate for distraction. Their demands grow harsher, their faces gaunt, eyes wild with fear and sickness. They cough blood onto your sheets, their breath sour, bodies burning with fever. Afterward, they stumble out into darkness, unlikely ever to return. Every morning, carts rattle through the streets, collecting corpses to dump into mass graves outside city walls. Bodies lie piled atop each other indiscriminately. Beggars, priests, nobles, thieves, all equal in death. You find a strange comfort in this equality, a brutal fairness finally granted by disease. Yet, despite everything, you continue to survive, persistently alive, though you barely feel it. Survival no longer feels like victory. Instead, it's a burden. You endure not from bravery, but from habit. Your life has become an endless repetition of meaningless rituals, cleaning bloodstains, washing bruises, carrying corpses. And yet, habit is all you have left. One night, unable to sleep, you sit quietly beside the window, listening to silence punctuated by distant wails and muffled coughing. Moonlight casts shadows across your bare walls, illuminating faded stains of blood and grime. Suddenly, a rat scurries past your foot. You feel no fear or disgust. Instead, you almost welcome its presence. Even vermin seem better company than most men. In the quiet, your mind drifts toward childhood memories, blurry images of sunlight, fresh bread, your mother's gentle laughter. But memories fade quickly, swallowed by darkness and bitter reality. You're not even sure they were ever real, perhaps mere fantasies invented to comfort yourself. At dawn, you return to work, scrubbing floors stained with vomit, blood, and despair. Your movements are mechanical, automatic, devoid of thought or emotion. You feel empty, hollow, your spirit eroded slowly by years of suffering. And yet, even emptiness is preferable to pain. You understand now that your life was always meant to be disposable. No one will mourn your eventual passing. You'll leave no mark, no memories, just another forgotten corpse on a market of death. And yet, stubbornly, your heart continues beating. Your lungs keep breathing, as though your body refuses to surrender, defying even your own exhausted spirit. In moments of bleak clarity, you realize survival itself has become a cruel punishment. Death, for all its horror, would offer relief, yet you cannot embrace it willingly. Some bitter instinct forces you forward, another day, another breath, another ache. Perhaps the plague will claim you eventually, or perhaps you'll remain trapped in this cursed existence. Either way, your fate feels irrelevant. Life or death, both outcomes seem equally meaningless. And so you wait, indifferent, numb, suspended in limbo between pain and oblivion, wandering aimlessly through your existence like a ghost haunting its own empty body. You exist because you must, not because you wish to. And perhaps this is the cruelest irony of all. The plague has offered freedom, yet denied it precisely to those most desperate for release. Tonight you lie awake, breathing the scent of decay, listening to the distant rattling of death carts. Tomorrow will come again, bringing more corpses, more suffering, more of the same emptiness you've learned to call life. You close your eyes, welcoming unconsciousness, knowing you'll awaken once more to a city of the dead, yet unable to leave it behind. This is your existence now, a meaningless dance upon a stage of plague and decay. You accept it, not bravely, just resigned, knowing escape is impossible. And so you drift, endlessly caught between the living and the dead, trapped forever amid the stench of the market of corpses. You are 22 now, though age means nothing in a place where youth dies quickly and survivors become old before their time. You feel ancient, worn thin, and brittle as parchment. Your body has weathered countless bruises, scars, and losses, leaving you drained and faded, like cloth repeatedly washed until threadbare. Yet you persist, existing stubbornly, a ghost haunting the edges of your own exhausted life. Matron now considers you nearly worthless. Your face, once youthful, is marred by violence and disease, your left eye clouded, barely able to see. The brothel no longer calls you to service clients regularly. Your faded beauty and scars have turned you into a relic, obsolete and easily replaced by younger, fresher bodies. Girls as young as 13 arrive, their frightened eyes reminding you of yourself. You pity them, knowing the brutal path ahead, but you say nothing. Words have long since ceased to matter here. Now your role has shifted. Matron assigns you the grim duty of training the newcomers, teaching them survival through numbness. You instruct them in the harshest lessons: how not to cry when struck, how to pretend pleasure when feeling only pain, how to detach from their own bodies. You offer no comfort, only brutal honesty. Comfort is dangerous, a luxury none of you can afford. Today you watch a girl named Lena, barely 14, trembling as you explain what awaits her. Her eyes fill with tears, but you scold her harshly. Never let them see you cry. Tears only encourage cruelty. She nods obediently, her fear thick and palpable. You feel a pang of guilt, an unfamiliar sensation, but guilt, like hope, serves no purpose here, so you bury it beneath practiced indifference. Lena will learn, or she will die. There are no other options. Your usefulness waning, Matron relegates you to the laundry, an endless, tedious task of washing blood, dirt, and bodily fluids from filthy sheets. The laundry room is a dim chamber, smelling perpetually of mildew, lye soap, and decay. Day after day, you scrub until your hands crack and bleed, barely noticing the pain. Compared to your past, washing stains seems mercifully simple. You share this duty with an older woman named Agnes, once beautiful, now stooped and bitter. She spits curses at the filthy sheets, the uncaring world, and even herself. Agnes never smiles. There's nothing left inside her but resentment and regret. You wonder briefly if you'll become like her, then realize you already have. Life outside continues bleakly. The plague has receded, but its shadow lingers. Clients have returned slowly, cautious but still demanding. Yet your isolation in the laundry spares you from their touch, allowing a hollow comfort. You've learned to appreciate small mercies, even those that offer no true escape. One evening, your only remaining friend, a frail, nervous girl called Mouse, because of her timid voice, falls ill. The disease isn't plague, but something worse, an illness that slowly consumes her from within, leaving her emaciated, delirious, and racked with pain. You sit beside her bed as she struggles to speak, her swollen tongue barely fitting inside her mouth. Eventually, she suffocates, choking on blood and mucus as you helplessly watch. Matron shakes her head in annoyance, ordering the body discarded with customary indifference. You watch Mouse's lifeless form carried away, feeling nothing, just emptiness, resignation, and exhaustion. Her death leaves no mark upon the world, disappearing silently into oblivion like countless others before. People outside whisper darkly now, pointing suspiciously at women like you who survive disease and misery against all odds. Rumors spread quickly: witchcraft, dark pacts, curses. You hear whispers as you walk to market, eyes following you warily. You don't deny the accusations, you almost prefer their fear. Let them call you witch. At least it grants a strange power, even if only an illusion. In quiet moments, you wander the edge of town, gathering herbs to soothe wounds or ease pain. Your knowledge, accumulated through years of suffering, makes you useful to others who quietly seek your aid. Yet even gratitude comes wrapped in suspicion, their wary glances reminding you that acceptance is impossible. One morning, a child finds strands of your hair woven into a crude talisman in the village well. The villagers panic, whispering darkly of curses and spells. You know the talisman, your feeble attempt at protection against further misery. They toss the charm into flames, chanting prayers to ward off evil. You watch from afar, laughing softly at their ignorance. They fear the wrong enemy. You possess no power to harm them, only the bitter wisdom to know that fate itself is crueler than any witchcraft. Your reflection in water frightens you now. The face staring back is unrecognizable, thin, scarred, marked by time and pain. Your clouded eye stares blankly, seeing only blurred shadows. You wonder vaguely how long you have left before blindness or sickness claims you entirely, removing even your final scraps of usefulness. In rare moments of solitude, memories flicker faintly. Your mother's gentle hands, sunlight filtering through dusty windows, laughter shared quietly. But these memories fade quickly, overwhelmed by darker visions, clients' harsh touch, matron's cold gaze, the endless cycle of suffering. Your past feels unreal, like a story told about someone else entirely. Occasionally, you consider escape, fleeing into the woods, leaving this life behind. But where would you go? Who would accept a marked, ruined woman? Your own survival has become a prison, its bars forged by fear, shame, and relentless practicality. So you continue, waking each morning without hope or expectation, simply enduring another day. Your life has become repetition, a loop of meaningless tasks and silent suffering. Yet you endure stubbornly, perhaps out of spite or habit, unsure yourself. At night, lying alone beneath filthy blankets, you listen to distant sounds, rats scurrying, muffled sobs, whispered prayers, and find comfort in their familiarity. Misery, at least, remains consistent. In a world filled with uncertainty, suffering is reliable. Yet you envy those who escape quickly, those who die young, their torment mercifully brief. Survival has made you old without age, tired without rest. Your spirit feels worn thin, ready to crumble beneath any new weight. Tonight, as you close your eyes, you understand finally that your life has been spent on the margins, an afterthought, barely noticed, easily discarded. Your existence matters little to anyone, least of all yourself. Yet even this bitter truth offers a strange peace, the resignation of someone who expects nothing and therefore fears nothing. You fall asleep in silence, waking hours later to repeat the same routines. Your body moves mechanically, emotionlessly, performing tasks you've memorized by heart. You exist as a shadow, unnoticed, fading into the background of your own life. Perhaps you think vaguely, one day death will come quietly, offering rest you've long ceased hoping for. Until then, you remain, aging silently, invisibly, caught forever between youth stolen prematurely and old age prematurely arrived. You no longer fear death or even pain. Numbness has become your greatest comfort. This is how your old age smells without age: sour, stale, bitterly familiar. It smells of mildew, loneliness, and unspoken despair, wrapped tightly around you like a shroud, until someday soon it will finally carry you away. The city burns in the early morning, flames licking hungrily at buildings long familiar to you: brothels, taverns, markets, even the church itself. Smoke fills the sky, heavy with ash, choking the horizon. Soldiers ride through the streets, their armor glinting red beneath the fire's glow. A new Lord has come, promising salvation and morality, yet his righteousness is as brutal as the plague ever was. You watch silently as soldiers set fire to the brothel, your home for years, now consumed by flames without remorse. Matron stands motionless beside you, her face blank, empty eyes reflecting flickering destruction. She makes no move to stop them. There is no stopping fate. Go, she whispers finally, voice flat and hollow. There's nothing left here. You wander aimlessly, displaced, unwelcome, your existence suddenly outlawed. Women like you, marked by your past, are now criminals simply for surviving. Freedom, you realize bitterly, is nothing but another cruel illusion. Where do you go when your very presence offends the new morality? Days pass in a blur, hunger gnawing your stomach, exhaustion weighing heavily on bones brittle from hardship. You find shelter briefly among beggars in alleyways, scavenging scraps of bread, rotten vegetables, anything edible. Your hands shake constantly, your body weakened by starvation. But even beggars reject you eventually, disgusted by your former life. One night, soldiers catch you hiding beneath filthy blankets, dragged roughly into the street, exposed and trembling. Their captain sneers disdainfully, gripping your chin tightly, forcing your gaze upward. Whore, he spits, eyes cold, disgusted. You stain our city. You don't answer, too tired even for anger or defiance. Your silence enrages him further, his grip tightening painfully. You have two choices, he hisses finally, the brand or the noose. You choose the brand, not out of bravery, simply because survival remains your only instinct. They force you to your knees, a hot iron pressed into your shoulder blade, searing flesh until you scream. Pain, familiar yet new, burns through your veins, marking you permanently. When finished, they toss you aside like garbage, laughing mockingly as you lie gasping on cold stones. Branded, marked forever, you become invisible even among outcasts. Shops refuse your business, villagers spit curses, children throw stones as you pass. You wander further from civilization, taking refuge in abandoned ruins beyond the city walls, a decaying monastery overrun by weeds and silence. The monastery smells of mildew, dust, and decay. Windows broken, doors rotted, walls crumbling slowly into oblivion. Yet, strangely, you feel a grim sense of belonging here, among ruins. Your soul similarly worn, forgotten, left to rot quietly beneath uncaring skies. Your only companion is a stray cat, thin, wary, covered in scars, drawn by mutual desperation. You share meager meals of scraps and rats, sitting quietly together amid rubble, understanding silently that survival is your shared bond. Months pass unnoticed, seasons changing around you, indifferent to your suffering. Occasionally, a village elder visits secretly, offering candle stubs and stale bread, whispering that he remembers you from before. You nod politely, pretending recognition, though faces blur indistinctly in memory. You realize now that you never mattered enough to truly be remembered. Life reduces itself further to simple, brutal necessities, finding food, shelter, warmth. Days blur together, monotonous yet oddly peaceful. No more clients, no matron, no violence beyond hunger and isolation. Yet even peace feels empty, meaningless. Freedom, you think bitterly, is simply loneliness in disguise. Some days you gather herbs, old knowledge still useful, exchanging remedies for scraps of food. Villagers approach cautiously, eyes wary, whispering softly, calling you witch behind your back. You neither deny nor embrace their fears. Witchcraft, prostitution, labels differ, but hatred remains constant. At night, insomnia haunts you relentlessly, memories rising unbidden, clearer now amid solitude. Faces flash vividly, clients, girls who died, mouse choking helplessly, matron's cold gaze. You toss restlessly, haunted by ghosts demanding recognition, apologies, justice, things you cannot offer even to yourself. Driven by restlessness, you begin writing your memories, painful, fragmented recollections scratched onto bits of parchment scavenged from abandoned ruins. Words flow awkwardly, fingers trembling, your past spilling onto pages stained by tears long dried. You write not for readers who would care for your story, but simply to prove existence, to claim humanity once denied. One night, candle flickering weakly beside you, you scrawl desperately. You survived. You lived. That must count. Yet doubt gnaws immediately. Does mere survival truly matter? Have you lived or merely existed, endured silently, invisibly, meaninglessly? Loneliness becomes your closest companion, silence your constant tormentor. The cat curls beside you each night, warmth barely sufficient against relentless chill. Your bones ache constantly now, body slowly betraying years of hardship. Yet death remains elusive, prolonging suffering seemingly out of spite. One bitter evening, snow falling gently through holes in the monastery roof, you lie shivering beneath thin blankets, breathing shallow, painful breaths. You wonder vaguely if tonight finally ends this endless misery, if your body will simply refuse to awaken tomorrow. The thought offers grim comfort, peaceful oblivion finally attainable. Yet morning inevitably arrives, sunlight filtering weakly through broken windows. You stir stiffly, bones protesting movement. Beside you, the cat mews softly, nudging your hand gently, reminding you of duties awaiting, finding food, water, another day's bitter survival. Habit compels obedience, your body rising mechanically despite exhaustion. Outside, the world remains indifferent. You scavenge scraps, feet numb with cold, mind blankly resigned. Returning home, you collapse weakly, staring blankly upward through the broken ceiling at gray skies stretching endlessly above. Suddenly, you begin laughing, quietly at first, then louder, uncontrollably. Laughter echoes harshly within ruined walls, startling birds from roosts, even frightening the cat who flees temporarily. Madness finally arrived, perhaps mercifully, yet laughter subsides eventually into quiet tears, soft, unfamiliar sobs shaking your frail body. Tears, finally freed, carry years of sorrow outward, soaking blankets beneath you. You weep not for loss. Life gave nothing worth mourning, but for relief, finally allowing vulnerability long forbidden. When tears stop, exhaustion overwhelms completely. You sleep deeply, dreamlessly, waking hours later strangely lighter. Pain remains unchanged, yet burden feels fractionally eased. Acceptance slowly replacing bitterness, resignation transforming subtly toward peace. Freedom, you finally realize, was never absence of chains, but learning to exist despite them. Life offered only cruelty, yet survival itself is defiance, quiet rebellion against fate, determined to crush you entirely. Your existence, meaningless perhaps to others, proves resilience even amid hopelessness. You will never truly escape, never reclaim lost innocence, or erase scars worn deeply beneath skin. Yet, tonight at least, peace feels briefly attainable. You breathe slowly, calmly, accepting existence fully, even if only momentarily. Perhaps freedom smells simply like survival, bitter, stale, yet undeniably persistent. And you, stubbornly alive, despite fate's relentless cruelty, have claimed this freedom quietly, invisibly, yet undeniably yours alone.